Make a motion to move it.
Second.
Okay, I guess I should backtrack. Any additions or corrections to them? Okay, then we'll come back to the approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Citizen statements, we have several people here. Aaron, I know from the Health Department, do you have something?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm-
we have you come over to the podium and. I know.
I like sitting. Okay, so I'm Erin Roberts. I'm from the Health Department here at Winnebago County. The one thing that I was going to kind of bring up is that we do have a lot of evidence-based classes that are being offered to the citizens in Winnebago County. So we do have Strong Bones, which I'm not sure how much you guys are aware of what kind of classes these are, but Strong Bones has been around for a while. So it's like a strengthening class for people. And we have many of those coming up this fall. Stepping On is another program that we have. You go for 2 hours for 7 weeks. You get to learn the basics on how not to fall. And it is a very good class. And we do have one of those coming up. The next one that is scheduled right now will be at the Menasha Senior Center
The name
in
of it?
October. That one is called Stepping On. So the Tai Chi is another one that just started this summer, and it's gotten a lot of interest from people. And so they're going to be looking at doing 2 more of those classes this fall. So far, the class that has been going on this summer was kind of just to see how it would go, and it's had a lot of activity, and people have been really enjoying it.
Who's the instructor on that?
Oh goodness, there's a lot right now. There are several instructors that are kind of working together because they all need to get some hours. With this just starting, they're all trying to work towards that. Megan Pauley from the Menasha Senior Center, she's also a nurse with the Menasha City Health. So, yeah, so she would be one of them. We also have Joanne, who's with us at the Health Department. She kind of coordinates all these programs as well. We've got a Healthy Living with Diabetes class coming up in October. So this will be the first time this class has kind of gone on in a while. So this will be exciting to have that done. And then the other thing that the Oshkosh Senior Center has been working on this summer has been a Walk with Ease program. This is also a new program. It's for people who have arthritis or people who are just looking to get into a nice walking program. So that one has been going on, and I'm pretty sure that's this morning. But I think they'll probably increase that a little bit more as interest takes off. But that's another one of our new ones.
And where are the classes?
They vary. I do have a handout that I can pass out and let you know, because they vary throughout the county. We're trying to get out to some more rural areas, so we do have some classes in Amro. We're trying to hit the northern end of the county, so that's where the Menasha Senior Center and the Y are coming in. And then we have several classes down here in the Oshkosh area as well. So I'll make sure I can pass out some handouts for you. And then the other thing I was just going to let you guys know is that we are working with the ADRC. We're doing a second Winnebago County wheelchair wash. We had one here in Oshkosh in June, July. And they tend to be really fun. So we're going to be doing this one actually on the northern end. So this is going to be at the Bergstrom in Neenah. And the wheelchair wash is kind of nice. We get lots of people that kind of come and they get it's kind of like the car wash for wheelchairs. So we kind of have the wheelchairs washed. We have somebody there to kind of look at the wheelchair, recommend maintenance, maybe tighten a few bolts here and there. Get a free meal. It's usually a good time, usually music playing. So that will be coming up September 22nd in the Neenah area as well. And I know that this will be talked about more, but there is the Time of Your Life conference that's going to be coming here in October. I believe it's October 8th. But I know that we'll be talking more as that's going on, but this, I think, will be the 3rd year for that. So that's gonna be coming.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any comments they'd like to make?
Good morning. I'm Michelle Peterson. I'm the executive director over at Azura Memory Care over on Westbrook Court in Oshkosh. And I just want to be a resource and help educate about this horrible disease of Alzheimer's and dementia. It's treated like a taboo, almost like cancer was 40 years ago. People don't want to talk about it, but it needs to be talked about and it needs to be educated on. And so, not only as a resource, but being the executive director, doing tours in the house and showing I have a very small home-like community, and it's an easier transition when people come from home and their caregivers are put to ease knowing that their loved ones are going to be cared for. So I just wanted to present and get the word out and continue to help educate about the disease. I'm also on the committee with the Alzheimer's Association, and Oshkosh has a walk coming up in September on Saturday the 15th. So if anybody can go online and donate, or if they want to participate in the walk, and I know we're up against the pet walk that day. So those who have animals will do the pet walk, and those that don't typically come and do the Alzheimer's walk. So, and I'm promoting that as well. So, but thank you for the time this morning.
Thank
Do you
you.
have a card?
I do. I will pass them out when we're all done.
And we have someone else in the back row there. Did you want to speak?
Oh, well, actually, Michelle and I are both on the Alzheimer's committee.
Okay.
We walk. I work
Okay.
with Julie, in Senior Lifestyle. So nothing formal today, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. New business and my oversight, I had talked with Bobby, but we didn't communicate properly. I'll take responsibility. We do have a speaker for today, and Julie?
Yeah, today we have Aurora Medical Center here. We're very excited to have them because they're going to be discussing the palliative program that they have. So we have Dr. John Newman, the president of Aurora Medical Center, Jennifer Davis, thank you, the nurse practitioner, and then we also have Trish, the palliative care social worker, that will be discussing the palliative program.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. As Julie said, I'm John. I've been in Oshkosh for about 4 years, and I'm the chief medical officer for the market, which means that everything that happens between Lamira and Kaukauna out to Wautoma needs to happen right. And so everything that should happen happens, and everything that should never happens never happens. So the chief medical officer's role is coordinating that care and also happen to run the hospital. With Julie asked us if we'd come out and talk a little bit about the palliative care program. And I wanted to just elaborate a little bit further, really about how we care for the elderly. I was thinking back to over 30 years ago when I was in medical school. Then they said pediatrics is just kind of treat them like young adults. And I think everybody realizes, no, you don't treat pediatrics like young adults. You treat them differently with different specialty, and we've got entire hospitals. But our geriatric population, we do treat just like older adults. And the reality is we've learned later than we did with pediatrics that how we were treating them wasn't working. And so, for example, I don't think it's possible for somebody who is age 65 or older, which is how we define geriatrics, to come into the hospital and leave the same way they came in. Fundamentally, that we know that we lose something. We lose something From mobility, we lose something. From muscle strengthening, we lose something. Maybe going to the operating room and truly lose an organ, right? But there's almost no way for somebody to come into the hospital and leave without losing something. And so part of our efforts were focusing in the pre-hospital care to say, what can we do to keep people out of the hospital? Because the hospital is not a safe place for anybody, but certainly it's not a safe place for anybody who's elderly. And the quickest way to accelerate dementia and delirium and Alzheimer's is to bring them in a hospital, get them really sick, throw a bunch of medicines at them, God forbid operate on them, give them an anesthetic, and then trying to get them out. And those are accelerations that once you accelerate to that, you're not going to get it back. And so our whole goal has really been what we can do to keep people out of the hospital, knowing that there's no way not to get in and out without losing something. Our emergency rooms are geriatric EDs and the geriatric emergency room really treats these patients different. Not only saying, what can we do to prevent them from coming into the hospital, but anybody over 65 who comes into the emergency room, even if it's an ankle sprain, they have a very high chance of coming back within the next couple weeks to months for something else. And if they do come back for something else, it's almost always progressively worse. And then once somebody actually gets admitted to the hospital, now you're on this spiral of you're not going to get that back. If they happen to come in, and the geriatric ED is something that we just recently achieved our certification, and across the nation, this is really less than 4 years old, this effort. And we're pretty proud of it, but really what we've changed is policies, procedures, and really when somebody's 65 or older comes in, they get treated differently. And the objective is to get them out and prevent them from coming into the hospital, but knowing that a 65-year-old comes into the emergency room, you're going to have to identify and allocate resources to help them, to prevent them from coming back. Because if you don't, they're going to come back. If they happen to come into the hospital, we have an acute care for the elderly program, which really, I mean, every patient, every day, we talk on rounds about how are we caring for this patient. And we've got geriatricians linked into those conversations for every one of our patients over 65. And the conversation is, be careful with this medicine, be careful with this disease process, and how do we treat them differently? And then how do we start allocating resources from the minute they come into the hospital that they're going to need when they get out of the hospital, with the idea of getting them out of the hospital as quick as possible, because every minute they're in the hospital, they're going to lose a little something, and we're on the acceleration pathway for the dementia, the delirium, and the Alzheimer's. Once we've got them in the hospital, then the acute care for the elderly really builds that support. And then our job is when we get them out of the hospital, then we leverage our skilled nursing facilities. We leverage our colleagues in the community as well as our primary care teams to say, get them in and get them seen pretty quickly to make sure that we're not having a natural progression. Along the lines of this, as we get into our elderly, eventually we're going to have to deal with some diseases that are fatal, but by definition, life is a fatal disease. None of us are getting out of here alive with them, but we'd really like to sustain and make it as long as possible with them. But how do we make it good? And so our system is not completely set up to make our lives good. Our system is set up to treat disease, not really to enable health and to prevent disease. And we're making those transitions, and we've talked about this move from volume to value and the value-based purchase to where, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, yeah, we're doing that. What we're doing is we're trying to make those efforts. And one of those efforts is really how can we identify those needs that we have as we move into a palliative care, opportunity. And so we recognize as the collective within Aurora, probably 4 to 5 years ago, that other folks across the country were making some great progress on palliative care, and we quite frankly weren't. And some of that was our own culture. Then there was a perception that if I'm an oncologist and I ask for help from a palliative care team, then I'm not going to be able to help my patients, whether it be chemotherapy. As surgeons would say, well, palliative care is linked quite often with hospice, and we're just going to go straight to comfort and not do therapeutic interventions. And I just told you that our whole existence has been around therapeutic interventions to treat disease, not really prevent disease. And so as we went through our own personal maturation, we realized we're just not doing a great job providing palliative care for our patients, and how can we do better with that? And this is a skill set, just like cardiothoracic surgery is a skill set. Palliative care is a skill set to say, how can we envelop those skill sets and then deliver them to the community, to our patients? And so that's where we're specifically, we've created a palliative care team. And you're going to get a chance to meet the team here in just a second, because their skill sets are different than other skill sets. But fundamentally, their job is to say, let's focus on this last part of life, which could be a month, could be a year, quite honestly, it could be 10 years. I'm embarrassed to say that when we move towards the latter aspect of hospice, the average time on hospice is less than 2 weeks. And that's not a benefit, that's crisis management. And having just gone through this with my daddy, that if you don't give that process as much time as possible, then so much stuff lingers over afterwards. And so, you know, when you go through what can we do to prepare people, 2 weeks is not an adequate preparation. But the people that come from our palliative care program generally have weeks to months, preferably a year of that transition, not just for the patients, but for the family. And so there is no family that doesn't do better and no patient that doesn't do better when you engage all the people that are interacting with their life. But when you come in to see me one-on-one as a patient, it's a challenge to engage everybody who can possibly help and support, and all the family. And that's one thing that our palliative care team does phenomenally well, to say, where can we leverage the help as we go through this palliative care transition? So, gosh, Jen, 2 years ago, are we getting close? We sat down, and Jen's got a passion for palliative care that came from, you know, being an OB nurse and came from running a hospice program. But she went off and did a nurse practitioner program. She goes, this is what I want to do for my life. And so when we sat down, quite honestly, I can identify people that have passion, and obviously they have education and talent, and I said, let's take that passion, let's put it to work with them. Where are we at on our journey in Aurora? I would say, quite frankly, that 10 being the best palliative care program in the world, and 1 being you don't have a clue what you're doing, that I think we're just past 5. And we recognize we've got a long way to go, but boy, we're a lot farther than we were a couple years ago. So I'm going to bring Jen and Tricia up here to talk about the palliative care program and fundamentally what they do. But I think it's important, and I see my role as saying this is all linked to everything else. And just like the pediatric's just not a small adult, the geriatric patient's not just an older adult. And this is how we leverage the community, because everybody in the community, from our resource centers to our social workers to the skilled nursing facilities to the family, come together and help us with this. But if it's not coordinated and someone doesn't have the job of, I own this, often it falls apart. And so, yes, sir.
What do you think the patient or potential patient ought to think, expect, do, ask?
I'm gonna let them answer that. You know, I tell you what, I've done pretty well in my life surrounding myself by smart people, and so I'm gonna invite them up now.
I like to think of myself as the best decision that Dr. Newman has made. So I'm Jennifer Davis. I'm the nurse practitioner for the palliative program, and I just thought I'd define palliative care a little bit. Dr. Newman did a great job of like why we wanted to get the program, but let's define it. People so much do think that palliative is linked to hospice. So it is about end of life, but to me it's more about preparing for end of life. So Dr. Newman shared I was a labor and delivery nurse for 8 years, and then I went into hospice for 10 years. And everyone's like, oh wow, that's completely different, but really it's the same. When palliative care works with people that have a chronic, progressive, and terminal condition. So that can be the gamut of dementia, Alzheimer's, cardiac disease, heart failure, COPD. So there's a lot, and cancer, of course, and so there's a lot of illnesses that it can encompass. But just as in the beginning of life, we plan for 9 months, for children, and who do we want there, and do we want a lot of medical intervention, or do we want to be at home? Do we want music? Do we want therapies? How are we coping with things? And it involves not just the mom, it involves the dad, the parents, other children. So there's a global thing. We need to be doing that same thing at the end of life, and we're not, because hospice is being used for 2 weeks, sometimes even 2 days. And that's, again, how Dr. Newman said, it's a crisis intervention, that's not a service. So our job is to kind of talk about how do you want that to look, and what do you understand about your disease? What kind of resources do you have at home? How are you coping? How are you doing at the nursing home, assisted living, and how can we help piece all that pieces together? So it's really a paradigm shift. We're used to everything happens with our primary provider. They can't do everything. That's why we have the cardiologist. When you have your high blood pressure gets to a certain point, or your heart disease, you go to a cardiologist. When your breathing gets to a certain place, you go to a pulmonologist. When your disease or your chronic condition gets to a certain point that you're having hospitalizations or ER visits or questioning what's happening and how can I best prepare, that's when the specialty of palliative care gets involved. So we thought that the best way to tell you what we do is to kind of tell you a story of one of our patients, and I'm going to let Tricia start our story.
Right. We probably could have just stayed where we were. I can talk loud enough. So I'm Tricia Morrell. I'm the social worker with the palliative care program, and I started back in December. Probably around January, we received a referral for a woman. She came in to see us. She trembled the entire time. She was extremely anxious. She suffered COPD. She was on a first name basis, I would say, with the paramedics that would come to her house several times a week because her COPD, her breathing issues were not managed. Most of the time it happened at night. She would wake up, she couldn't catch her breath, she didn't have the appropriate medications or tools we always say we put tools in your toolbox. She didn't have the tools in her toolbox to ensure a comfortable night, to ensure that as she was tucking herself in at night, she could go to sleep with knowing that she had the peace to rest. She was isolated socially. She never went out of the house, and when she did, it was in an ambulance. She had lots of friends and family that she had been going out to lunch with and doing different things, but since things had gotten more exacerbated, she wasn't doing that. She was very isolated. So she came in and we talked to her not only about what was most important to her, but also we put some tools in her toolbox. Do you want to jump in and kind of explain?
I gave her some medications. We did some education on why she was so anxious. How did shortness of breath have to do with anxiety, and how it's like a cycle, that you don't know what came first, the shortness of breath or the anxiety.
We worked on advanced directives with her, which was very important to her. She wanted to make sure that her affairs were in order, because obviously with all of the ER visits and nightly calls almost to the paramedics, she was worried that her wishes would not be respected, and thought that the end of her life was close.
Yeah. So we, again, put the tools in her toolbox. We met her back probably about a month later. A completely different person walked in the door. She was sleeping well because she had a different medication that she used, I would say, nightly, but then as she started to sleep better and get more engaged and feel like the anxiety level is down with her affairs in order, she was going out to lunch with her friends and family. She went for an overnight stay at
Super Bowl.
For the Super Bowl, which was has never happened.
She was amazed that she could do that.
Yeah. She literally, sadly, this is how I judge how well we do. She came in weeping, how much we changed her life in just that month. So we met with her every couple of months just to make sure everything was kind of tucked in and doing well. She did, after several months, have another hospitalization. We try to prevent them as much as we can, but sometimes as disease progresses. So then she went to a rehab facility, got stronger, felt really well, got able to go home. Her daughter did move in with her to help her. So we kind of facilitated that about getting the family on the same page. She did well at home, and then again, the disease exacerbated. She did come into the hospital, and the family knew they didn't want to go through that cycle of hospitalization, rehab, home, hospitalization, rehab, home. Not that rehab is not fantastic. But she was kind of stuck in that wheel, and really, what do I want? And the burden of the disease, is that what I want the end of my life to look like? And she said, no, I want to be at home. And her kids, of course, supported any decisions that she made. So we were lucky enough, we're in the hospital as well as the clinic. So we had a family care conference, talked about what was important, what would that look like, what would those options and choices look like for her. We put in all the right tools and resources. She did end up going to hospice. And she died at home peacefully with her family around her, actually just this past weekend. So I started back in July, so that was a year. That was her last year of her life. Had we not been involved, I fear that it would have been more 911 visits, and the worst, every exacerbation that happens with any illness, it's harder to overcome that. So I really feel like our involvement made her have the best quality of life for her last.
And even in the end, before she transitioned to hospice care, talking with the family and talking with her separately, they all had the same goals, but they were all afraid to talk. So we kind of facilitated them coming together and saying, listen, you guys are all on the same page. Let's join our forces together. And it was really, I think it's an honor to be able to be a part of that from our perspective too.
And we are the two most wonderful people of the palliative.
Jen's not afraid to toot her own horn.
We also have a medical director that just joined us within the last month. His name is Dr. Bennett. He's kind of the northern side, so he goes between Oshkosh and Green Bay, and eventually Manitowoc as well. He's a fantastic resource. He's been instrumental in kind of giving us the direction, because it is such a new program, and it is a different mentality thinking that providers and caregivers alike need to kind of shift to. So he's been fantastic. And then we also have a chaplain that works with us. Her name is Tracy. So she does phone calls. She can see people in the hospital. She does visits with us when we feel that there's a spiritual crisis. So yes, did we answer your question? No, that's why he's raising it.
They came in to see us. That's at the hospital?
In the clinic, we
In the
have
clinic.
we have a meeting room that we meet
Which
with people.
clinic is,
At Aurora.
all right. And do they need a referral from their primary physician?
They do.
Or a physician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends
Or
on what
their
their
specialty.
insurance.
And then you'll set up an appointment with them as to when they should come in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on their convenience.
Yep. We try to link when they're there for somebody else. So between your primary and your other specialty doctors, we try to have it be the same time you're coming in, so there's not a lot of back and forth. There gets to be a lot of specialties involved when we get sicker, so we try to make it as convenient as we can. And we always encourage that family or somebody else comes along. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it's important to have another person there to hear that story as well. We have selective hearing, and sometimes you hear something, and sometimes you bring up the H word of hospice or end of life or chronic condition, and people kind of shut down. So it's good to have other people there to listen as well.
Where are your physicians at in terms of buying into the new culture, and making those referrals appropriately and timely and all of that, you know?
Well, like I said, I think it's a paradigm shift. So in the most loving manner, when you have physicians that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, they have a particular practice. Palliative care is new. That wasn't part of their training in school. Some are more on board than others.
I was gonna say, or the perception is that they
Yeah.
are managing palliative care.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
Right.
So, which is okay.
Which is okay, because there's primary palliative that they should be opening the door and trying to work and put those tools in the toolbox. When the patient's more complex, that's when they should be referring to palliative care for more of a specialty. Just like the doctor manages your blood pressure medication, your primary doctor does, but there comes a point where he needs to pass the baton to the cardiologist. And so sometimes some of the younger physicians in the hospital, they appreciate the resource, they see the value. It was
Yeah.
part of their curriculum and training in med school, so they're a little bit more on board, but I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
So somebody's gonna have to answer the hard question, right? And so in reality, and again, back to scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're the worst palliative care referral ever, 10 being you're the champion of the world, I'd give our physicians about a 4. And only because they really feel like they've done it. And so to teach physicians, fundamentally, they need to try it. And when they go to the palliative care team and they come back and they've done something that they didn't think of, that they just made them better doctors,
Right.
you get that one patient at a
Sells it.
time. And I would say between oncology, nephrology, and pulmonology, those are folks that say, no, I'm doing this, but the reality is, in a 10 to 15 minute office visit, you can't do this. And so they are becoming rapidly aware that, yes, they're doing some part of palliative care, which we can't remove, but they're not doing the bulk of palliative care, which is essential. And they're getting it. But we're patient.
Takes a while.
We're patient, but 4 out of 10.
Yeah, all right.
I think we're winning them over.
That's
I
good.
think we're winning them over.
I think we're getting a lot more referrals too from our hospitalists because they are in there, they
They're there.
are introduced in a very short snapshot of time. So they're looking for additional resources that will continue to follow that patient on an outpatient basis.
And they're
as
seeing them at
well.
their worst in the hospital.
Right,
When
right.
when they come in with an acute crisis,
Mhm.
they're like, whoa, this is big, I need some help with this, and so that's, and then as we follow on the outside, and then I always communicate with their primary or specialty doctors, and then they're like, oh, they did that, and oh,
Sure.
they're asking a lot more questions, and then that's when we will get the referral from them instead of through the hospitalist, so. We just have to prove ourselves, it's a new
Sure.
program, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's good.
Anyone have any questions for them?
Do you have any literature?
What did you say the name of that program was?
The palliative care,
Palliative care. I mean, I didn't bring any.
You got any kind of a paperwork on this thing?
I will get
We're
it
good.
to you.
Well, you
Yeah.
will, thank you, I'm really interested in that, I really interested.
Great initiative.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The one thing, ethically, I've challenged with this for the last, 30 years of my life, that I realized that out of 30 years, I have taken care of maybe 5 doctors to die in the hospital. And so doctors die differently. And I don't mean that jokingly, they die differently because from day one of med school, they're planning out, all right, if something happens, what's going to happen to me? And so the average end-of-life care for America is about $8,000 for that last week of life. Any guesses on what the average doctor spends that last week of life? $25. And it's usually for pain management, which can be done in the form of pills. With but out of the 5 doctors that I've helped die in the hospital, one doctor built the hospital, recruited the medical staff, had been there for 30 years, and by God, he was going to die in the hospital. And that's fine. The other one got so sick so fast, there was no way to plan anything else. The other one got fairly demented. His wife got tired of him and said, he's yours now. But otherwise, doctors don't die in the hospital. And so the struggle that I've always had ethically with why is it okay for doctors to die one way and the rest of our patients to not to? And I think it's really because we've been having this conversation for so long, our entire careers, we come up with a good plan. The palliative care team accelerates that experiential learning and comes up with a plan that truly everybody, I think, wants to do. They just don't plan it. And if you don't plan it, it doesn't happen. And so I think, and it takes time, and it takes effort, and then it takes resources. And so dedicating the time and the effort, the resources, is really why the creation of the team is here. So I just really fundamentally believe that we should do to others, as we would have to ourselves. And right now, there's a big difference from how we're allowing our patients to die and the way doctors die. And I think it's okay to talk about that. So I appreciate your time this morning.
One other question.
Yes, sir.
Transition from palliative care to hospice, is there always hospice involved in your transitioning, or does palliative care take them right through death? Or, I'm just wondering when it comes in and when you wouldn't
Right.
make a
Each
referral.
person is unique.
Okay.
We have the capacity to follow, but to me, I feel like hospice is just another layer of support.
Right.
And so my goal, having worked in hospice for 10 years, people just they were on for 2 days or a week, and it's sad. So my mission is to get people to that service sooner, so it's a benefit to them. So when you think, oh, I need hospice, you're far past when you needed it. You should have had it months earlier.
Right.
So, but then there's times where, palliative care can see people when they're continuing concurrent with treatment. So in oncology, for instance, some people continue with their treatments and radiation, and so that's a piece that you can't have hospice yet until you stop that.
Right.
So we're able to be that support to them, and we almost give them the benefit that hospice would have while they're still following their goals and their desires to continue treatment, and that's okay.
When someone transitions to hospice, typically we do continue to kind of watch and follow and offer support, not to interfere with the hospice services or support, but almost to further enhance.
Yeah.
And just kind of validate for the family to make
Good.
sure that they understand, nope, this is, we would be doing the same thing.
I think when you ask physicians, do they all have hospice when they're at home dying? Not all, because they've all coordinated how to get that help and that resource to their homes. But for the folks that don't necessarily have those relationships they could leverage, the hospice team is pretty valuable. And so this is my opportunity to say thank you to Julie, to Trish, and to Jen for taking care of my dad. And I'm proud to say we did it just the way we talked about.
Okay.
Just a quick piece. Anything else new going on special at Aurora these days?
Oh my God.
But you've only got about 2 minutes.
Let's talk about it.
I would say that we're pretty proud of our vascular surgery program that we're growing. We're pretty proud of our bariatric surgery program that we're growing. We've got a dermatologist in town now, and so we've got a dermatology program going. We've just recruited our first addictionologist so that we can really create a network of folks that are going to coordinate and handle addiction with them, because right now everybody's been trying to do a little bit, but nobody's really been able to do it, much like the same principality of palliative care, that you need the experts and then you need to leverage everybody else who's touching the patients with them. So if that's not enough to keep you awake at night, that's what I wake up at night going, what does our community need? And we talk to the community, and we talk to our physicians, and we talk to our patients, and we say, this is what we need. And so, palliative care was probably one of the biggest ones. Addiction is obviously another one of the big ones with them. But then all the other things, like we would like to be taken care of here in Oshkosh. And so that's why you need some of that subspecialty care. And so I think short of heart surgery and open brain cranial surgery, I think our community, between our health systems, we're doing it to where we can keep people here within the Fox Valley. So I think we're doing a pretty good job for you. And it's nice for you guys to have people competing to care for you. I love that you have Theta Care and we have Ascension and we have Aurora all competing to take care of you. With them, whether you realize it or not, that makes everybody compete and elevate to the level to where they're all better. So I think we should all be fortunate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Hold on.
Do you want me to drop it off? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go through, is there any other new business, by the way?
I just want to invite everybody to Bella Vista on Saturday at 1 o'clock. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. Very excited about this. We're having a great celebration, door prizes. 2 o'clock, the Del Reys will start playing, and they'll play until 4 o'clock. I think we're going to have a pretty big crowd, so you might want to bring a chair. But we look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Old business, our committee reports, strengthening our partnership with neighborhood associations and other partners. Lurton?
I talked with Pam Reuter because she is the person who each month meets with the representatives of the neighborhood association and making sure that we have that relationship, so if anybody in the elderly in the neighborhood associations thinks that somehow we can be a help or a question that we could answer, they know. And I had mentioned a little bit told her about the Take Me Home program.
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman's going to do a lot more about that, so I won't. But she went and talked with Todd Rugby. And so I'll use a lot of this when I see her next time, and I hope that we can get possibly a video of this meeting, this portion of the meeting we've just had, that she could show to the representatives of the neighborhood association. I think that would be wonderful.
Excellent.
Tonight is also the neighborhood night out, so I just wanted to throw that in there. So.
Okay. Improving access to affordable transportation and delivery services for seniors. Peggy? Claude, anything? Okay. I did have a brief chat with the program at Walmart, one of the gals that's responsible for picking orders. It's all online, it's not call in, so there's some issues there. But I posed enough questions that she was going to go back and check on what would be a possibility for folks that don't have computers, that don't have charge accounts or debit cards, things like that. But that particular placing your order and picking up the order has been going well. And what I'm hearing from folks that have been utilizing it, the gals that are picking orders are very meticulous, that a lot of times the fruits and vegetables are even better quality than what they themselves have been picking up in the stores. So congrats to Walmart on that.
Judy, what's the charge for that, or do they say?
I didn't get into that.
Oh, okay.
She was busy with other things, and I was on a timeline too, but
Okay.
I will be checking further.
It's $15 at Festival if you order, and you need a minimum amount that you can order, and then that's added to your bill.
Right, and especially living where you do, several neighbors can put everything in on one order
Oh, cool.
and save that charge. Okay. Creating community design and policy that supports an age-friendly community. Jean is not here. Improve communication and visibility of available services to seniors.
Here we go.
Julie?
Well, Ron, Judy, and myself met at, and we discussed a couple of different things, and including the website and the updates to the website that were needed. Obviously, we're in that transition where they're building that new city website, so I think there's a lot to be seen yet, and our capabilities involved with that, but I think we have a pretty good list going of what we want to include on there. And then we also talked about budgetary items and just looking at ways to promote the Committee on Aging effectively and efficiently. So, and Ron, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Looking at presentations for future meetings, I think was the other part of our get-together, so. Yeah.
So you could do a presentation to the monthly meeting of the neighborhood associations.
Yes.
Good.
along, along with that, a little bit on, with the Senior Expo coming up, we talked about being able to have a small display board
Yes.
with our information, and we'll be asking to have different members of this committee to be there for an hour or two. I think that's actually on October 2nd, our October meeting date. Jean Todrick will be at our meeting next month to give an update on that. I serve on the planning committee along with Jean Wollerman, so we'll have more information as we go along, probably with updates to the committee with a quick email. I think that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Ron has got several
I've
other
got
items.
a couple more items to talk about. One is the new Medicare cards, just a update on that. On July 28th, there was a little report, Tammy Elliott on WBAY talked about an Oshkosh woman who had been contacted by a scammer. Kind of the story was she was getting repeated calls from someone trying to get her to reveal her new Medicare number. And she was being told that they would cancel her Medicare benefits if they didn't give it to her. So another example of the scammers are persistent, and people need to know, hang up when you get any kind of a call like that asking for any private ID information. Another that she reported on at that same time was a scam to get a person's old Medicare number by telling the person that there's a refund for turning in their old Medicare card. And also this person was trying to get them to say, well, we can have that refund sent to your bank account. So if you could give me your bank account number, we'll take care of that for you. So hang up, just plain hang up. They're trying to take advantage of you. So I guess the creativity does not end as far as attempts to part people from their resources.
Excuse me, Ron.
Yeah.
Along the line of the Medicare cards, people are telling us that they've not received them yet, and they've moved within the last year or so.
Oh, sure.
Their, Social Security benefits are going to their bank account, no problem. And so what we have to remind everyone is, if you've moved, you need to change your address with Social Security. And that does affect any mailings that you would get with your Medicare as well as your Social Security benefits. And so be careful.
Yep, be very careful. And the other I'd like to talk about a little bit is the Take Me Home program. I had contact with Sergeant Raghi this past week, and I think you all have copies of 3 different programs: Take Me Home, Project Lifesaver program, and also Safe Seniors Camera program from the Department of Justice. And just a little bit about each of those. The Take Me Home program started this past June here in Oshkosh. It's a voluntary, free program for people who may need special assistance if they're alone or in times of emergency, like someone with dementia, autism. It's Oshkosh Police Department database that includes the person's name, address, picture, caregiver information, etc. And caregivers sort of see this program, he said, as sort of an assurance program or insurance in case of an emergency, like that person getting lost, wandering, whatever. He said currently they have 10 clients in their database. It just started in June now. They have 10 clients in their database so far, and more are being added as referrals are made to Sergeant Raghi. But they've not used the program yet in terms of actually needing to implement it for someone who's wandered. Referrals should be made to Sergeant Raghi at 920-379-3538, 920-379-3538. And he would share more information. And if you, the handout,
That's different than this one.
yeah, that's the general number. This is his direct number. You can go with either one. If you want to leave a message on his voicemail directly, if you use the 379-3538, you'll get right to him. On the Oshkosh Police Department website, you can get copies, additional copies of the handout that I handed out regarding this program as well. The next one is Project Lifesaver program. Also, Todd is the contact for that program, and you have a brochure on that program. This started in April 6th of 2017, so it's not been around Oshkosh all that long, but it started nationally back in 1999. There was a Oshkosh rescue success story already this past August. An elderly male with dementia wandered away from home. He was gone 4.5 hours, was found by a citizen. He'd suffered serious dehydration and serious sunburn. The very next day, he was registered into this program, the Project Lifesaver. In October of last year, he wandered again, and he was found within 16 minutes of the Oshkosh Police Department's arrival on the scene. His dementia has since increased, and he's needed to be placed in assisted living, so he's no longer using the program from there. But this shows the value of that program, and there are 3 active clients at this time in the Oshkosh city. One additional person is a transient who is active in the Oshkosh Lifesaver program part of the year, and she's active in the Albuquerque, New Mexico's Project Lifesaver program the other part of the year. So quite a flexible program here. The Project Lifesaver nationally has rescued 3,459 persons. It was per their website the day before yesterday. 39 of those in Wisconsin. So this program is active throughout Wisconsin, not everywhere in Wisconsin, but many places. Rescues in Wisconsin have included Alzheimer's, people with Alzheimer's, autism, brain injuries, dementia, Down syndrome, schizophrenia, severe attention deficit disorder, neurological disorders. So it's not just for older adults with dementia. It can be any number of situations. There's excellent information on this program on the Oshkosh Police Department website. On their homepage, on the left-hand column, you click on Project Lifesaver. It's the bottom icon, and it takes you to this brochure, information regarding the national program, all kinds of really good information. And then referrals for Project Lifesaver also are made to Sergeant Raggi at that same number, 920-379-3538. And the other program I want to just mention is Safe for Seniors camera program, or excuse me, Safe Seniors camera program. It's initiated this spring by the Department of Justice, and that's the other handout that Bobby made copies of. That's right from the Department of Justice website. Both our Sheriff's Department, Winnebago County Sheriff's Department, and Oshkosh Police Department are participating in this program. Helps loved ones who are concerned about someone walking away from home, again, wandering. I'm sorry, that's not correct. This has to do with caregiver abuse. I'm still on the other program. Where they're suspecting that there's some caregiver abuse going on, they can contact the Department of Justice, and they provide a camera and a memory card through local law enforcement, so they're working with, say, the Oshkosh Police Department to provide covert surveillance. A community member signs a 30-day contract. They're required to save any recordings and notify local law enforcement or the Division of Criminal Investigation of any recordings that they believe depict illegal conduct. And that can be extended beyond 30 days if on a case-by-case basis. And again, referrals are made online at the Wisconsin Department of Justice website, and you see kind of the information they seek in the handout, or by contacting the Department of Justice at area code 608-267-1313, 608-267-1313. And Sergeant Raggi reports that there have been no referrals made on this particular program as yet in Oshkosh. So I think it's potentially an excellent resource, and he's going to be meeting with the ADRC, Aging Disability Resource Center, later this week, he said, to also highlight some of these resources for their staff. So, questions? Or I'm going to give the additional handouts left over to Lurton, so he can share them with neighborhood association contacts and help get the word out there, because 2 of these are pretty much new programs, and the other one's only a year old, so, okay, great.
There's definitely a lot more out there today than what
Oh, yeah,
we saw in our
Yes.
working years.
no kidding, yeah,
Okay.
long overdue.
Under other business, Food Truck Friday, August 17th, it'll be the last one for the summer. Funds will go to the Friends of the Center for fitness equipment and what else, Bobby? Remember?
Listen, that,
This and that, okay.
Bobby Joe, how has this been turning out pretty good now that we had these, going on these meetings like we've been having, dinner, these trucks and all this stuff out to South Park is good participation, that's what I'm trying to say. It is, okay. Because I've been to a couple of them already, so I know that there's a good crowd comes up. And a good place to park is always in the church parking lot, so I always got a place to park.
Well, and the July one, there was a lot of rain earlier in the day and heavy rain at the end of the program. So, got saved.
Yep.
Is there any other business? Okay, our next meeting date is September 4th, and we will have Kate Mann from the Oshkosh Police Department. I have a motion to adjourn.
so move.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.